Warning, if you have not seen whatever it is that I'm reviewing, this video may contain spoilers of key events. You'll have to consider this before watching the rest of the review. You have been warned.
Akiyuki Shinbo, Gen Urobuchi, and Shaft presented a marvelous crafting of unadulterated effort when they unleashed Pure Machi Madoka Magica that shined a light on the modern anime wasteland, leaving an unforgettable mark on many when it aired. It's also an anime with a popular label, and that label is Madoka Magica is a dark magical girl anime, which is uncalled for since animes of that genre tend to be perceived as kid-friendly than anything, so to shake things up was quite a shock. However, before directing Madoka, Akiyuki Shinbo directed another magical girl anime, Mahou Shoujo Lyrical Nanoha, which got sequels and movies, but were not handled by him. Instead, those were directed by Kezo Kusakawa, director of Dog Days and the subject of this review, Daybreak Illusion, a magical girl anime written and composed by Michiko Ito, who was previously involved with Suzuka, Ro Kyubu, and multiple iterations of Queen's Blade. In a post-Madoka landscape, Daybreak Illusion gives it a go, and there are some ideas that are interesting in ways, but only manages to fuck it all up, and in its fuck-up, created the most intricately flawed anime I've ever tried to review. I won't make any direct comparisons to Madoka, for the reason that Daybreak Illusion did have something going for it. I just wish it existed from beginning to end. And even my abilities as an amateur anime reviewer aren't ripe enough to truly insert a needle into every orifice that encompasses the handicapped execution of its potentially unique plot. You just have to wonder what they were thinking with this one. In a world where tarot cards are taken very seriously, we have our protagonist, Akari Taiyo, a happy-go-lucky lolly who loves tarot cards for all their tarot-ness. And despite her mother being dead, she leads a good life, living with her aunt, uncle, and her cousin, Fuyuna Shinzaki, a good girl by nature, willing to help strangers, and a surprisingly successful fortune-telling business like the lolicon jailbait she is. This all changes one night, when a giant monster called a Demonia suddenly appears and tries to kill her with its tentacles. But before all hope is lost, powers erupt from Akari, transforming her into a magical girl with the tarot power of the sun, and promptly slays the creature, revealed to be a possessed Fuyuna, and then forgets about her for a mysterious reason. In fact, it seems everyone forgot about her. What is going on? Eventually, Akari faces another Demonia, only to have her ass handed to her. Just then, other magical girls come in and defeat it, saving her life. Akari is then introduced to Sefiro Fiore, an organization dedicated to stopping Demonia in their tracks, and this is, more or less, where the plot starts. Akari is teamed up with those who saved her. You have Seira Hoshikawa, a hot-blooded, stoic, and hardened tough girl with the tarot power of the stars, who hates it when others show an apparent weakness that gets in the way of her vendetta against the Demonia. Ginka Shirokane, a rich girl with the tarot power of temperance, who serves as the energetic character of the group, and Luna Tsukuyomi, a timid girl with the tarot power of the moon, and serves as the lesbian of the group due to her crush on Akari, turning Yuri undertones into fact, which might be a bummer to some shippers. And the others mainly serve to provide exposition and aren't focused on much. So you have an anime where the characters fight monsters that others have no chance of defeating for a supernatural organization of tarot card users. What can go wrong? Well, considering the numerous dangers threatening their way of life by the overarching villain Cerebrum, things may not be so straightforward after all. For what it's worth, I found Daybreak Illusion to have some ideas that were varied in terms of what you'd expect from a stereotypical show of the genre, presenting a world with concepts that are commonplace, yet feel fresh at the same time thanks to world building that's surprisingly efficient at establishing basic rules that help sell it at first. Tarot cards in particular, aside from being taken seriously by regular people, are also the source of each girl's elemental powers, as well as the basis for the Demonias themselves, who are born from the negativity of humanity, take control, and attack from an alternate dimension in parallel to the real world. And the kicker is that the only way to kill them is by destroying their Diablos tarot card that powers them, which in turn kills the host as well. The first 3 episodes did a decent job at conveying Daybreak Illusion's potential for intrigue about who the Demonia are, the nature of business Sefiro Fiore pull off, and what the characters do, react, and how their victories can be defeats, knowing fully that they had taken a life in the process. It's material that should have given Daybreak Illusion some honest-to-God traction and identity. It even managed to cultivate some interesting character relationships that could have been used to flesh out character arcs. And since this is early on in the story, I was a little excited about where it can be taken from here. The possibilities for which the story can branch out, and I was willing to invest in the proverbial Rube Goldberg machine that is the frickin' narrative. Sadly, as we come to find out later, Daybreak Illusion had other things in mind, and rears its head for what would turn out to be an anime with 99 problems but a dumpster ain't one. How in the flying motherfuck did things suddenly do a 180 of having a solid direction to derive from, to grabbing a number of directions and end up with not a single integral one? To start off, Daybreak Illusion has a knack for simplifying its themes at the cost of bits and pieces of the narrative's cohesion integrity. What starts as a somewhat unique magical girl anime has a sheer mental dysfunction over what to do. By the halfway point, the show downplays the previous conceptual inner workings of its plot, which includes its own exploration of consequences of being a magical girl, and regresses into a flavor-of-the-day magical girl show. For the most part. And I say for the most part because the anime decided to switch gears yet again and put an emphasis on the villain and his evil plans to insert evil plan here. Daybreak Illusion always feels like it's trying to go somewhere with what it puts forth, but nothing truly remarkable is realized, and every twist is questionable at best. At one point, I even thought that Daybreak Illusion was one big metaphor centered around psychology, considering that the demonia are born through the negative sides of humanity, and that Akari, having the power to speak to them, was supposed to be this big plot point that I expected to have great meaning and payoff that didn't arrive. It ignores strengths to focus on weaknesses, lacking a compelling narrative, and fails to suspend disbelief because he can't help but question everything. I mean, we even have talking animals for fuck's sake.
全て報告させてもらう。行くぞシュレディンガー。
面白いにゃ。
何？
It's like they came up with this shit as they went along, people! What I'm getting at is that it tries to do too much at once, which only balloons issues as the plot threads that barely work conflict and outweigh threads that do work. And pinpointing each one would be of little reward, complicated further by the relatively dark tone, which instead of being used substantially, is used superficially. So in all its seriousness, it isn't such. Characters don't change through an arc as much as they just change, which is awfully convenient in certain moments when Daybreak Illusion tries to build drama that can be resolved with even more convenience. But that's alright, since the anime doesn't have a clear goal, flip-flopping between a show with the tools to craft an engaging experience to being a happy, fun village of hackneyed plot developments with a twist is a-okay, right? Right? They do try to deliver on what the tone gives off, but in an occasionally juvenile fashion by playing around with sexuality and mystery laid into the story. They come up with implications for its questions without answering them, turn one of our characters into a half-naked wolf girl with no nipples, and even throw in supernatural pedophilia. No, really, that actually occurs. And did I already mention the logic? Yeah, it's pretty much horseshit that's been scattered from one side of the planet to the next, shifting and changing on the fly whenever needed in order to serve insert moment here, which downright annihilates belief. From the rules of the demonia, the elemental powers, the villain's agenda, the actions of our main cast, things are not consistent with the show's own damn plot, ultimately contextualizing the alignment of good versus evil as a matter of whether or not you are happy or not. And yes, Kitty Vickies, I will never give up can be used to defeat the bad guy. And don't bother bringing up questions when something out of the blue happens. Trust me, it won't make sense. If Daybreak Illusion was running a marathon and it had to take a piss, this is the type of anime that decides it wants to take that piss while running. The fucker leaks everywhere and doesn't hold it together. Loose ends are abound, and if you want thrills, you're out of luck. Don't be surprised when you find yourself confused over the show's intentions. That said, to call it a Madoka clone isn't justified in my opinion. For all its uses of typical tropes and iconographies, Daybreak Illusion could have stood on its own, but instead, we only got a floppy mess, which is a shame. I was disappointed with this anime, but I am also disappointed in my inability to fully take it apart. There's just so much else to Daybreak Illusion that I can't help but want to fathom it all, but can't, leaving this faint glow of what would be a different review. Granted, I think I got the essentials out of the way, saying what needed to be said, even if there are things I still want to say. Now for the stuff that needs to be said for other reasons. Produced by AIC, I don't feel a whole lot of enthusiasm when it comes to Daybreak Illusion's presentation. Not to say it's bad, the animation is serviceable all around, but considering that I can say the same for plenty of other shows, it doesn't mean a whole lot overall. The designs are a mixed bag. When in battle, the aesthetics can show off some supernatural designs that fit the moods and do interest the eye sometimes, but underwhelm at the same time. It's no Gekidan Inukuri, so to speak. When a battle isn't in progress, things can look super banal. From coloring, lighting, detailing, and well, that's a room, these are the outdoors, that's a city, that's a forest, that's a magical room. Yeah, it's that banal. Then you get to the character designs. Oh yeah, sure, you got this fairly cute chick right here. I mean, look at those curves, man. But they went overboard with the rigidness, leading to sharp heads and thin bodies that make the cast look as though they can break like pencils. And when combined with their ridiculous hairstyles, they all have some very indecisive qualities about them. It's as if the designers mishmashed a truckload of ideas and couldn't settle with a single one, so left them in this half-finished state, which is ironic since that's pretty much the plot in a nutshell. Speaking of characters, the voice acting is run-of-the-mill, failing to provide a standout performance on all fronts. The actors barely do the uninteresting characters any favors, which sucks cause this is where some damn good vocal performances would have come in handy, not only for the roles, but the story at large. The only real note about the acting is that Saika Miki has a role as Tough MacGuffin McTuff. It seems being complicated was too tiring for her and decided that being bland would make for an excellent vacation. As for music, since there isn't an entire standalone soundtrack, I can't say much about it. Then again, if I'm not talking about the tracks right now, it's probably because they lacked a memorable impact on the experience. Look, even if it had a better eye for cosmetic minutia, Daybreak Illusion scales are already unbalanced to begin with, and if you've been following this review thus far, you already know which side is going to hypothetically sink like a boulder, and what side is going to sink like a boulder in a river with no water in it.
The internet doesn't exist.
Daybreak Illusion is the anime equivalent of a clogged toilet when you try to flush too many varieties of toilet paper. In the pursuit of constructing a feasible plot, it then proceeds to drop the ball when it realizes that whatever it had in mind was obviously too much for it. A mess is one thing, but a conflictual mess? The outcome is nothing short of a disaster. From its narrative suicide that packs about as much nuance as Battlefield 3's soundtrack, you are sure to get plenty of opportunities to pick shit apart. And while it's far from the worst anime that I've ever seen, it's a bad anime nonetheless. And I don't mind it being this bad. Honestly, Daybreak Illusion actually falls into the type of bad I don't particularly mind. If there's insultingly bad and there's hilariously bad, this anime only falls in the realm of being interestingly bad. In that as much as it gets things wrong, you want to know why it went wrong. In fact, I'd rather watch an anime that rewards you with knowledge of what not to do when making a story than an anime that shows nothing but contempt for you. Daybreak Illusion is a bad show that you never stop thinking about, challenging you as if it wants you to tell it why it doesn't work, like it wants to be told every single reason why it sucks, and that has never happened to me before. And admittedly, I can't do any more than what I did here. So all in all, Daybreak Illusion is a harmless, overstuffed sack of shit.